I am 25-year-old and married to my husband, also 25-year-old. We got married when we were both 18. We both come from well-off, pretty religious families. However, my mom is the most religious out of all of them. My husband and I have never really been that religious. We mainly got married young because he proposed when we were 17, which was both of our dad's idea. We wanted to be engaged for quite a long time, but that didn't end up happening. And we got married a week after my 18th birthday and 4 weeks after my husband's 18th birthday. We had a pretty traditional ceremony. Both of our dads paid for everything, as well as our house, which we moved into after we got married. My mom was very happy with the wedding taking place, as I was the first daughter to get married. Once my husband and I moved in together, that's where the problem started. My mom, out of the blue, a month after we got married, showed up to our house uninvited and let herself in. We were in the kitchen and thought someone had broken in, and my husband nearly hit her over the head with a frying pan, Rapunzel style. We were highly confused as to how she got in. It turned out that my dad gave her a key and never told us. She assured us that this would never happen again, and she just wanted to see me, as I wasn't answering my phone. I told her to knock next time. This obviously didn't happen, as if it had, I wouldn't be writing this. She proceeded to show up uninvited multiple times to our house over the next 2 years. On multiple occasions, she would come over simply to ask us why we weren't in church. Also, on multiple occasions, she would come over and mention we weren't good enough Christians due to us having no pictures of Jesus. We thought that all this was due to us getting married young. However, these issues continued well after we got married and are still happening. My husband and I have been married nearly 8 years and have stable jobs. I get it that we are younger than most, but we live in an area where getting married young is pretty normal. Almost all the people I went to school with are married now, so it's not a case of it just being us. This went on for 2 years until we were around 20, when we decided to change the locks. This didn't stop her, as she at some point stole the spare pair of keys, which my dad had, and would keep on inviting herself over. On multiple occasions, she would let herself into our house and walk in on us having intimacy, to which she would yell at us for committing sins. And I don't just mean she would walk into the house. She, on multiple occasions, would have had to walk into our house, walk up the stairs to our bedroom, and go in. And there was no way she couldn't hear us from outside. She also, since I was young, constantly told me and my sisters that once we are married, it's disrespectful to touch other men. She yelled at me once for giving a man a handshake at an event. My husband does not care about this rule at all. However, my mom does. She called me on my husband's 22nd birthday because in a story my friend posted, the waiter tapped me on the shoulder. I had brought a cake for my husband, and the kitchen wanted to know when to bring it out. My mom then proceeded to yell at me over the phone for disrespecting my husband. Stuff like this has been going on for nearly 8 years of our marriage. I'm sick. My husband is sick of how she is acting. However, I have recently discovered that she does it to all my siblings that are also married. So we made a plan and we all went over to her house and told her that she needs to back off from our lives. She doesn't see it that way, and now she has the family divided. Some believe she is right, others believe us. Now I don't know what to do because she's still showing up at my house. My husband and I are thinking about moving, but we really don't want to, as we love our house. But we might have to if she doesn't leave us alone. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Sounds like you guys are both serious pushovers. This should have been stopped after the second time. The electronic lock with passcode suggestion is great, but your father might be in on this. I don't know that I would trust him. You might give him a unique door code, this is possible on the lock I have, and see if your mother shows up again. If she does, you remove his code, and he's not to be trusted. Comment 2. One question. You say that your dad bought you a house. Was it a gift in your name, or do your parents own the house? If the former, then I agree with all of the advice to change locks and make sure your mom knows not to enter without permission. If your dad's parents own the house, you may need to be more tactful, if only to prevent your parent deciding to end your tenancy. Now, for the update. Thanks for reading my last post. So here's what's been happening over the past 3 months. After our big confrontation with my mom, things didn't get better. In fact, they got worse. My mom started showing up even more frequently, almost as if she was trying to prove a point. She'd come over at odd hours, sometimes early in the morning or late at night, and it was driving us crazy. We tried talking to her again, but it was like talking to a brick wall. She just wouldn't listen. One day, my husband and I decided to take a weekend trip to get away from all the stress. We didn't tell anyone where we were going, hoping for some peace and quiet. But when we got back, we found out that my mom had been calling everyone in the family, saying she was worried about us, and that we were being irresponsible for not letting her know where we were. It was infuriating. We felt like we couldn't even take a break without her meddling. Then, about a month ago, my husband got a job offer in another city. It was a great opportunity, and we thought it might be the perfect chance to put some distance between us and my mom. We talked it over and decided to go for it. We started making plans to move, but we didn't tell my mom right away. We wanted to get everything in order first, but somehow she found out. I suspect one of my siblings let it slip, but I can't be sure. She showed up at our house, furious, accusing us of trying to run away from her. It was a huge blowout. She said some really hurtful things, like how we were abandoning the family and that we were being selfish. It was hard to hear, and it made us second-guess our decision. In the midst of all this, my dad called me. He rarely gets involved in these situations, but this time he did. He asked me to come over to their house to talk. When I got there, he was surprisingly calm. He said he understood why we wanted to move and that he supported our decision. But he also asked me to consider how it would affect the rest of the family, especially my mom. He said she was struggling with the idea of losing her children, and that maybe we could find a compromise. I left that conversation feeling conflicted. On one hand, I wanted to do what was best for my husband and me. On the other hand, I didn't want to cause more pain for my family. We decided to put the move on hold and try to find a way to make things work here. But things took a turn for the worse. My mom's behavior became even more erratic. She started showing up at my husband's workplace, causing scenes and embarrassing him in front of his colleagues. It was affecting his job performance, and he was getting really stressed out. We knew we couldn't keep living like this. We finally decided to go ahead with the move, despite my dad's plea for compromise. We found a new place in the city where my husband got the job offer and started packing. But just when we thought we were getting away, my mom did something that shocked us all. She filed a complaint with our church, accusing us of abandoning our religious duties and bringing shame to the family. The church elders called us in for a meeting, and it was humiliating. They questioned our faith and our commitment to the community. It felt like a personal attack, orchestrated by my mom, to keep us from leaving. We tried to explain our side of the story, but it was clear that my mom had already poisoned their minds against us. We left the meeting feeling defeated and more determined than ever to get away. We finalized our move and left without saying goodbye to anyone. The first few weeks in our new city were tough. We were trying to settle into our new life, but the emotional toll of everything that had happened was weighing on us. My husband was doing well at his new job, but I was struggling to find my footing. I missed my family, despite everything, and I felt guilty for leaving. Then, about a week ago, I got a call from my sister. She told me that my mom had been hospitalized. Apparently, the stress of everything had taken a toll on her health. I felt a mix of emotions, guilt, anger, sadness. I didn't know what to do. My husband and I talked it over, and we decided that I should go back to visit her. When I got to the hospital, my mom was in bad shape. She looked frail and weak, and it broke my heart. We had a long talk, and for the first time, she seemed to understand how her actions had affected us. She apologized, and I could see that she was genuinely sorry. But it didn't change the fact that so much damage had been done. I stayed for a few days, helping my dad and siblings take care of her. But I knew I couldn't stay forever. My life was in the new city now, and I had to go back. Leaving was hard, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Now we're trying to move forward. My mom is recovering, and we're keeping in touch, but things will never be the same. The past has left scars that will take a long time to heal. We're focusing on building our new life and finding some semblance of peace. Thanks for reading. Aita for kicking my husband out after catching him. Texting his friend about my mom again. I, 28, am struggling with my marriage to my 25 husband. So, long story, every year I throw my husband a birthday party, lavish, and invite all family and some of his childhood friends. I cook food, make a cake, and buy him gifts. A couple of years ago, I was 4 months postpartum and tired all the time, but still managed to throw his party. Everyone had a great time, and there was alcohol involved. I didn't drink, of course. Anyway, the night of the party, my mom and her friends stayed behind, as well as my husband's childhood best friend. They were all sitting on the back porch, just drinking and talking about life. Around 2 a.m., maybe even later, I texted my husband and asked him to come inside to help with the baby or just be there for emotional support because it was a rough, sleepless night. He wouldn't text me back. I peeked out the window and noticed he was texting and smiling, but it wasn't to me, as I wasn't getting anything back. I let it go and just went to sleep, knowing something was off. The next morning, I just had a feeling. I went through his phone when he was asleep but didn't find anything. Then I had a bazinga moment and went through his Apple Watch, and there it was. He was texting his childhood friend about how he thought my mom was hot, how he would eat her out, and then some banter back and forth between them about them trying to get my mom inside to see what they would be willing to get away with. I confronted my husband, threw his watch at him, and told him to get out of my house. He was gone for a couple of days, and I was fully ready to divorce. After talking with my mom and his mom, I decided to let him back in. He begged me to believe him, that it was just a joke. I didn't take it as one, and my husband is the most calm and docile person I've ever met. I have never heard him talk about a woman in such a way. I told him in order for this to work out, he had to apologize to both my mom and me and cut contact with his friend because this wasn't the first time his friend had disrespected me. He agreed. We worked on it. There were a couple of times, though, that I caught him making plans with his friend, hanging out with him, but then lying about it. I finally gave up and just let him hang out with said friend. It's been a couple of years, and he really shows no signs of hiding things. I know the passcode to his phone. He leaves his phone lying around. He doesn't really drink anymore at all. I can't get past it, though. I just can't trust him. I find myself going through his phone and his watch. I watch his eyes around my mom. She is very pretty and young-looking. I constantly accuse him of looking at other women, and it turns into a fight. I do love this man. He really has shown signs of improvement and was very remorseful throughout the whole thing. Is something wrong with me? What do I do? Now for an update, I actually posted to Reddit when this first happened, seeking advice. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I can understand why trust is an issue here. From what you were saying in the post, it does kind of look like it is a really, really stupid conversation between two close males talking freely without working through how really wrong it was. It was wrong. It does look like he is trying to regain your trust by leaving his phone for you to see and just trying to be a better person. I would normally say throw it in the garbage, but I'm kind of thinking you both have a chance with the future. You may need therapy and still some tearful conversations to somehow leave it in the past. But it does sound like you both love each other and do want to make it work. Best of luck to you. Comment 2. Your husband disgusts me. Or if he cared about you, he would never have made such awful jokes, and he would have really cut out that friend. He does these things because he knows he can get away with it. Stand up for yourself. Ask yourself if being single is worse than being with such a disrespectful man. Your husband should make you feel loved, supported, and an equal partner in life. Does he? Now for the update. Thanks for all the comments from my last post. So here's what's been happening lately. 2 weeks ago, I decided to throw my husband another birthday party. I thought maybe if I could recreate the good times we used to have, it might help me move past everything. I went all out again, cooked his favorite dishes, baked a cake, and invited family and some of his childhood friends. I even invited his childhood best friend, thinking maybe I was being too harsh and that it was time to let bygones be bygones. I thought it would show my husband that I was trying to trust him again. The party started off great. Everyone seemed to be having a good time, and my husband looked genuinely happy. I was feeling optimistic, thinking maybe this was the turning point we needed. But then, as the night wore on, I noticed my husband and his friend sneaking off to the side, whispering and laughing. My heart sank, but I tried to brush it off. I didn't want to ruin the night with my suspicions. Later, I saw my husband texting again, Just like that night a couple of years ago. My stomach churned, but I decided not to confront him right then and there. I didn't want to cause a scene in front of everyone. Instead, I waited until the party was over and everyone had left. I asked him about the texts, and he got defensive, saying it was just harmless banter with his friend. I didn't believe him, so I went through his phone again while he was asleep. This time, I found something worse. He had been texting his friend about how he still found my mom attractive and how they should try to get her drunk to see what would happen. I was furious. I woke him up and confronted him, and he tried to brush it off as a joke again. I couldn't believe it. After everything we had been through, he was still disrespecting me and my mom. I kicked him out of the house again, but this time, I didn't feel the same resolve to work things out. I was just so tired. Tired of the lies, the disrespect, and the constant feeling of betrayal. I called my mom and told her everything. She was supportive, but also hurt. She couldn't believe my husband would still be talking about her like that after all this time. The next day, my husband came back, begging for forgiveness. He said he was drunk and didn't mean any of it. He promised to cut off his friend for good this time, but I couldn't bring myself to believe him. I told him I needed time to think and that he should stay with his mom for a while. During this time, I started reflecting on our relationship and how we got here. I remembered how we met in college and how he was always the calm, collected one. He never seemed like the type to disrespect women, let alone his own wife. But then I started thinking about the little things I had overlooked over the years, like how he would sometimes make offhand comments about other women, or how he would get defensive whenever I brought up his friend. It all started to add up, and I realized that maybe I had been ignoring red flags all along. I also thought about my own behavior, how I had become so paranoid and distrustful, how I would constantly go through his phone and watch his every move. I wondered if I was partly to blame for the state of our marriage, but then I reminded myself that trust is earned, and he had done nothing to earn mine back. A few days later, my husband came back again, this time with his mom. They both pleaded with me to give him another chance. His mom said he was truly sorry and that he was willing to go to therapy to work on his issues. I was torn. I still loved him, but I didn't know if I could ever trust him again. I decided to give him one last chance, but with conditions. He had to go to therapy, cut off his friend for good, and be completely transparent with me. He agreed, and we started going to couples therapy together. At first, it seemed like things were getting better. He was more attentive, more open, and more willing to work on our issues. But then, a week into therapy, I made a mistake that changed everything. I was feeling insecure and decided to go through his phone again. I found messages from a different woman this time. They weren't explicit, but they were flirty enough to make me feel sick. I confronted him, and he admitted that he had been talking to her for a few months. He said it was just harmless flirting and that he never intended to take it further. That was the last straw for me. I realized that no matter how much he promised to change, he would always find a way to betray my trust. I told him I wanted a divorce, and he didn't even try to fight it this time. He just looked defeated and agreed. The fallout has been tough. Our families are devastated, and my mom feels guilty, even though it's not her fault. I'm trying to focus on myself and my child, but it's hard. I keep wondering if I made the right decision, but deep down, I know I did. I deserve better than someone who constantly disrespects me and breaks my trust. Looking back, I realized that I should have trusted my instincts from the beginning. I ignored too many red flags and gave too many chances. But now, I'm determined to move forward and build a better life for myself and my child. Thanks for reading. Aita for taking a break from my boyfriend. After he refused to control his anger. My boyfriend, 32-year-old male, and I, 27-year-old female, rarely get into serious arguments where anger gets the best of us, has only happened twice in 4 years. He's not typically an angry person, but when he does get angry, he completely switches up his personality and tries to act like a thug or something. Every time he has to behave this way in public, his anger or frustration is totally called for. People are dumb sometimes, I get it, but the way he reacts is uncalled for and again, embarrassing. Example. Last year, we went to a convention to get some items signed by someone important. We had to get up at 6 a.m. to get in line for this. While we were in line, he was waiting on the side, preparing his items to be signed. I won't go into detail, but he had to open the boxes carefully, blah blah. Anyway, it gets to be our turn in line, and my boyfriend comes back to the line where I and his friend are waiting. The girl who is managing entry tells him he is not allowed to get his items signed as he was not waiting in line. We explained to her that he's with us, but he was preparing his items, and she's like a hard no, won't let him in, and tells him to go to the back. Instead of asking for a manager or something, he starts getting in her face, yelling at her and calling her dumb, and then he is obviously asked to leave the convention. As he's leaving, he starts knocking down signs and behaving like a child. I'm so embarrassed, I just want to crawl in a hole. I understand the girl was being unreasonable, but his reaction only made her decision absolute, instead of trying to reason with someone else above her or whatever. Second example. Today we were trying to go down a street that appeared to be blocked off, crime tape, but there were still pedestrians walking in the sidewalk area. So we thought maybe it was just the road blocked off. We asked the security guard if the sidewalk's blocked, and he responded with some attitude saying, "You see this yellow tape, don't you? That means it's blocked off." My boyfriend again started being really rude to the security guard, mocking him, and demanding to know why he gave him attitude. I told him to just leave it alone. While I understand that he gave him attitude, it wasn't a big deal, and we'll just go a street over. My boyfriend got upset by my reaction, and I told him that it's super embarrassing when he acts like this. His response was, "Who are you trying to impress? We don't know these people," and further tried to justify the behavior by saying he rarely acts like this. My fear is his anger, although infrequent, may get the best of him one day if he runs into someone willing to instigate and heat up the moment even more. I just don't know how to explain this to him, because right now he's not talking to me after what happened, and I know he's probably still heated, but I just don't get it. Like, who cares if some random security guard gave you attitude? Like, sure, call him out if you want, but you're not a thug. I don't need to get in his face and mock him. When the security guard said that, even I said, "Whoa, what's up with the attitude?" But I left it at that. My boyfriend took it to a whole other level. I just want this to stop. I believe that the way you carry yourself in public is important. I'm not saying you should constantly be trying to impress others, but act like a civilized human being. What should I do? It's starting to change the way I look at him, and I'm losing respect for him. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I know it's beside the point, but the lady monitoring the line wasn't being unreasonable to all. He doesn't get to cut the line just because you were in line. Anyone joining the line joins from the back. That said, he sounds terrible. He's not likely to stop acting like that. Comment 2. Your boyfriend is a jerk, plain and simple. I understand the girl was being unreasonable, but No, she wasn't. She was enforcing the rules her employer put in place to stop people from cutting the line. Your boyfriend is the problem in both scenarios you describe. Now, for the update, thanks for reading my last post. So, it's been a month since that incident with the security guard, and things have taken a turn I didn't expect. After that day, my boyfriend and I had a long talk about his anger issues. He promised he would try to control his temper, and for a while, it seemed like he was making an effort. But then, something happened that really tested his resolve. About 2 weeks ago, we were at a small local concert. It was supposed to be a fun night out, just the two of us enjoying some live music. Everything was going well until we got to the entrance. The bouncer asked for our IDs, and my boyfriend handed his over. The bouncer took a long look at it and then said it was expired. My boyfriend insisted it wasn't, but the bouncer wouldn't budge. I could see the anger building in his eyes, and I tried to calm him down, but it was too late. He started yelling at the bouncer, calling him names and demanding to be let in. The bouncer, of course, didn't take kindly to this and told us to leave. As we were walking away, my boyfriend kicked over a trash can and started shouting about how unfair it was. I was mortified, people were staring, and I just wanted to disappear. We ended up going home, and he spent the rest of the night sulking. I tried to talk to him about it, but he just kept saying that the bouncer was an idiot and that he had every right to be angry. The next day, I decided to do some research on anger management. I found a local support group and suggested that he attend a meeting. He was reluctant at first, but after some convincing, he agreed to go. I went with him to the first meeting, and it seemed to go well. He even admitted that he had a problem and needed help. I was hopeful that this would be the turning point. But then, last week, something happened that made me question everything. We were at a friend's barbecue, and one of the guests made a joke that my boyfriend didn't find funny. It was a harmless joke, but he took it personally and started yelling at the guy. The situation escalated quickly, and before I knew it, they were in each other's faces, ready to throw punches. Our friends had to step in and separate them. It was a mess. After we left, I told him that I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep making excuses for his behavior and being embarrassed in public. He got defensive and said that I was overreacting, that it was just a joke and he had a right to be upset. I told him that it wasn't about the joke, it was about how he handled it. He didn't seem to get it. That night, I started thinking about our relationship and whether or not I could see a future with him. I love him, but his anger is becoming a deal breaker. I can't keep living in fear of when he's going to blow up next. It's affecting my mental health and my self-esteem. I feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells, trying to avoid anything that might set him off. I also started thinking about his past and whether there were any signs that I missed. I remembered a story he told me about his childhood. His father was a very angry man, and my boyfriend often found himself on the receiving end of his father's outbursts. He told me that he promised himself he would never be like his dad. But now I see that he's following in his footsteps. It's heartbreaking because I know he doesn't want to be this way. But he doesn't seem to know how to change. I also thought about my own past and how my parents always taught me to handle conflicts calmly and respectfully. They always emphasized the importance of communication and understanding. I realized that my boyfriend and I come from very different backgrounds, and that might be part of the problem. He never learned how to deal with his anger in a healthy way, and now it's affecting our relationship. I decided to give him an ultimatum. I told him that he needed to get serious about anger management or I would have to reconsider our relationship. He didn't take it well. He accused me of not supporting him and said that I was trying to change him. I told him that I wasn't trying to change him. I just wanted him to be the best version of himself. He didn't seem to understand. The next few days were tense. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was mostly arguments. I could see that he was struggling, but he didn't want to admit it. I felt helpless, not knowing what to do or how to help him. I started to think that maybe it was time to walk away, but I didn't want to give up on him. Then, a few days ago, he came home from work in a terrible mood. He had a rough day and was taking it out on me. I tried to be supportive, but he snapped at me and said some really hurtful things. That was the last straw. I told him that I couldn't do this anymore and that I needed some space. He didn't take it well, but I stood my ground. Since then, we've been taking a break. I'm staying with a friend, trying to figure out what to do next. I love him, but I can't keep living like this. I need to take care of myself and my own mental health. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I can't keep making excuses for his behavior. He needs to get help, and I need to decide if I can wait for him to change. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.